As lovely as that was for all of you, Jumbo and I actually get a special treat. I don't know if you see this too, but we get to see Kimberly directing, and it's lovely. And then she'll say when there's a space and she's getting ready to bring the voices back, you can see her mouth, 1, 2, 3, and I'm on pins and needles. I'm waiting for the 3. It's very exciting. Here it comes. So we spent this week and this entire month actually reflecting on the theme of justice and opportunities and how they work with one another, how they ask us questions, how they point us in directions. I want to leave you this month with a map, a set of tools, and a story. Trouble is, the map is wrong without tools, and the tools are useless unless you use them. And the story, well, actually I already told the story, and it's just a story unless you hear it as something more. So the map is my argument that justice, what love looks like in public, is a progression from compassion to heartbreak to connection and purpose, and finally, through that, to joy. That's the map. That's the trajectory. Rooted in compassion, which, as we know, is suffering with others. Rooted in compassion. The energy for justice comes from heartbreak. Now, that may induce and include some anger, but if your efforts for justice are rooted in anger, they will likely only reproduce more injustice in its wake. Justice may include anger, but if it is what love looks like in public, then justice must be rooted in love. Which means heartbreak is our invitation. I am suggesting something that you may find that you already know. Find what breaks your compassionate heart and walk into it. Therein lies the possibility for joy. For righteous joy. In spite of our inherent wisdom, our habit is to numb ourselves from heartbreak, or even the disconnection that keeps heartbreak at bay. And we do this with any of 1,000 devices and methods. Most of these devices and methods, from TV to booze to sweets to shopping, maybe even a kind of anger-fueled activism, wind up substituting superficial sensation for deep feeling. Confusing joy with entertainment. Or even more masochistically, with fear. Today, especially, I think, many of us, and many of those who we find ourselves in opposition to, confuse joy with fear. Because fear feels like a purpose. Anger feels like a purpose. Thus, the culture of convenience and fear in which we live stymies the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. Joy comes through connection and purpose. And this may seem obvious. If you sat down to think about it a bit, it probably would occur to you. But a lot of social science salaries were paid to articulate that with some evidence. The current research on happiness indicates that the sense of connection and purpose are key. I might suggest that injustice is the result of disconnection. For it results in objectification, othering, commodification, and the consequent exploitation and oppression. Disconnection, the sense of disconnection, results in exploitation and oppression. You do not commodify or objectify and exploit what you sense a connection with. You naturally will not do that. You do not oppress what you love. Joy comes through connection and purpose, which often involves work, but is not the same thing as work. I don't want to suggest that joy is earned. Joy is grace given. But also, joy without integrity is half felt. It is comfort without conscience, and therefore it is unconscious and unaware of itself. But to embrace joy, to seek it, to cultivate it, to invite it, is also a return to something that is inherent in us and in the world. Connection and purpose are a natural state in an interdependent web of existence. Connection and purpose are a natural state in an interdependent web of existence. But in our haste, in the state of disconnection we have evolved into, it is all too easy to lose touch with our natural state of connection and purpose. And we're like the three girls in the maze, trying to find our way home, trying to find our way to some fresh air. Missing it for our haste. So I've identified a map to get us back in touch, to get us breathing that good air again. Compassion and heartbreak foster connection, purpose, and ultimately joy. But the map might be misleading, because I laid out a path that is not always in a straight line. And if you get discouraged by that and get off the path, there are distractions, temptations on the way. It's often 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I set a trajectory, but that doesn't mean it's smooth, and sometimes it is even difficult to see the path or to know where it begins. Even when we as a congregation, or we as a species, have not lost touch, we can, do, and should still strengthen our sense of connection and purpose. So our daily living in the culture in which we find ourselves, the culture of disconnection, often frustrates our attempts to find the path or stay on the path. And even when it does not, even when we still feel that sense of connection, we can, should, and sometimes even do things to strengthen our connection. Indeed, that is what we are presently doing right now. As you sit here, all religious activities, going back as far as they go back, are based on fundamental activities that carry wisdom and tradition and articulate the world that that tradition seeks to bring to life. We here every Sunday try to together articulate the world that we want to see manifest. And these activities, which I will name in a moment, are brought about ritualistically in our lives and in the life of this congregation. But no ritual is real. No ritual is real without two ingredients that seem to be at odds. These two ingredients are necessity and play. Ritual is underwritten by necessity. Without necessity, it's empty. Ritual is underwritten by necessity and brought about, enacted through a kind of play. All of this is absurd that we do together every Sunday. It is play acting. I dress up. Sometimes you guys do too. But it is given profundity and meaning by our intention. It is playfulness granted profundity because of necessity. So necessity and play mingle, and ritual is born. We light our chalice. We share joys and sorrows. I put on a stole and say some words. We sing. So the activity that this community deems as necessary, that we deem as necessary, it's interesting to think about it in this way. We have deemed these activities as necessary, and we bring them forth through some descendant of play. The activities are singing, meditation, listening, sharing, giving, and learning. We sing hymns, circle songs, and chalice lightings. We listen to one another, to our hearts, to the world, to music. We meditate in silence or by guide or with song, and we give our attention and our money and our talent and time. We learn sometimes through oration. Singing, sharing, meditating, giving, and learning. We have intentionally or not deemed those elements crucial to the creating and maintaining of a community that we feel reflects us. Beyond that, singing, sharing, listening, meditating, giving, and learning are ultimately connective. These are activities that connect us and, I imagine, may reveal purpose when we do them. They are a path to joy. They connect you with the world in a way that makes the world make sense. In connecting us, singing, sharing, listening, meditating, giving, and learning shape the world. They have the power to shape the world insofar as they shape our experience of the world. For they influence our perception, and perception is one of the fundamental ingredients in consciousness, how we relate, how we take our place in the cosmos. Earlier I said that learning is what happens during the oral portion, this portion, of our practice. By learning then, I refer to the testimonies and also the reflection. But, as I wrote that, upon further reflection, it occurred to me that learning isn't quite the right word. But mistakes can be valuable. And this one, I think, was. And so I left it in. I want to contrast it with perhaps more accurate words. What, instead of learning, maybe reflection is a better word. And now we can include the journals as part of that. Anyway, it's not the object of a sermon, or as we call it, a reflection, to teach you something. You might learn something, but that's, in fact, not the primary object of that portion of our practice. It is rather the purpose of a reflection leader as the station evolved out of the ancient storytellers, then shamans, then priests. Our purpose is to maintain, sustain, invigorate, and sometimes reveal the world that the community, you all, have agreed on as meaningful. Even if only as something yearned for. And this goes even for a prophetic reflection, that is, one in which the minister holds the congregation to account. That is still meant to maintain, sustain, and invigorate and reveal a mutual world. Today, even as before in ancient times, when the moon-touched truth-teller spreads their arms over the polis and convicts them as hypocrites, the wisdom of prophetic speech must be felt deep in the bones of both the preacher and the pew sitter, regardless of whether or not it is received with welcome or resistance. Hell yeah and hell no are rooted in an essentially shared nerve. The truth of the prophetic pronouncement is indicated by that nerve's spasm, and I hope you had some spastic nerves last week. Prophetic speech, meaning simply truth-telling speech, is powerful only insofar as it resonates with the deep, oft-times denied or disconnected truth that we know in our hearts as final in its moment. And so the storyteller, myth singer, wizard, shaman, priest plows through the ages, morphing as it goes until it looks a little worse for the wear and shell-shocked from several wrong turns like this. Not me, but the role that you and I co-create and maintain, a minister to make sure that you have the opportunity to sing, share, meditate, give, reflect. These play-acted necessities that make the world. And here I think is something you might find true. For it is something that I think you already do. I am suggesting that you listen to yourself and do it more. I think you already know this because you're here. Sing, share, meditate, listen, give, and reflect more. Listen for the song. The world is singing that song, leading us out of the maze of our disconnection. Do it daily. Don't wait for Sundays. Do it when you eat. Sing over your meal. Share some of it. Give it away. Listen. Even if no one's talking, listen. Meditate and reflect. Sing, share, meditate, listen, give, and reflect. Additionally, these are the tools. These are the tools. Take these tools with you as you find your compassion and as you follow your heartbreak. These are the tools that make the map go where you need it to go, which is hopefully to joy. Don't numb the heartbreak. Follow it. It will lead you to your connection and purpose. Do not retreat into ease, or if you do, don't stay there. Even though all love ends in heartbreak, we love anyway because it's worth it. It's a reasonable trade. I will trade love. I will give love even if it means it will end in heartbreak. Every time. It presents us in that heartbreak with an opportunity to create a more connected and purposed experience with the world. A connected world is a more beautiful world, a more joyful world, and in a way it's already here. It's inherent in each of us and in the planetary systems in which we live. It's inherent, but it's covered, waiting to be heard like a mother's song for we who are lost in the maze. Sing, share, meditate, listen, give, and reflect. The path to joy, the trail to justice, the way to connection and purpose, the road through heartbreak and compassion is truly the road less traveled. And it will make all the difference. With that, I would ask you to find your journals. And if you do not have one, you could raise your hand and Jombor will bring you one. When I give you the prompt, you'll have about 4 minutes or so to respond in words or pictures in your journal. These will be anonymous, so please do not sign them. They will also be public reflections of your own, and they will give us practice at being reflective and generous. So here is the prompt. I'd like you to write these words down. Write down singing, sharing, meditating, listening, giving, and reflecting. That's 6 words. Singing, sharing, meditating, listening, giving, reflecting. Now, I'd like you to circle the one that you remember has connected you I want you to write about a memory of feeling connected through one of these activities. And then, if you have some time, you might speculate as to connected to what. You may begin.